Now I'll again invite you to put your screen on speaker view if you want to see me preaching. And the sermon title today is LGBTQIAAP in 2020. One of my favorite 19th century philosophers, Arthur Schopenhauer, tells us that all truth passes through three stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. And third, it is accepted as being self-evident. This is Santa Cruz Pride Weekend, and I had planned to preach on the celebration and acceptance of the LGBTQI community. I wanted to acknowledge that progress has been made, but we still have a long way to go to reach full acceptance of everyone. Even within this fellowship, we still have much to be revealed about our hurtful behavior. I wanted to give a sermon like I have for the last 6 years on Pride Weekend, but I've been overwhelmed with the last few weeks and seeing anew the system that has discriminated against the LGBTQI community. That same system also oppresses and dominates all groups, all people, anyone who doesn't conform to the societal norm established by those in power. Let's use this month to not stop with celebrating the progress of the LGBTQ community, but let us examine the underlying causes and symptoms of oppression. I believe that we are living in a time where a great truth is being revealed. We're in Schopenhauer's second stage, where this truth is being violently opposed. And I hope to live long enough until it is accepted as self-evident. The truth being unveiled for me is that the puritanical belief that people should follow conforming norms or be punished, the truth is being revealed that this belief system is totally destructive. The truth being revealed for me is that conforming to norms are defined by those in power and use punishment to force conformance. Harmony through forced uniformity is a falsehood. And for centuries, this forcing of believing and acting in accordance with what is deemed acceptable has been upheld by punishment. Punishment in either this world by force and laws of institutions formed to keep peace for the powerful, or punishment by conforming to the threat of punishment of an eternal damnation in hell. We have been told that to conform will bring peace and happiness, and if you don't conform, you'll be punished in this world and the next. Our Universalist ancestors in the late 1700s decided that God is too loving and just to punish those who don't conform. They discerned that a loving God did not create hell, and that universally everyone could and would go to heaven. That's where the name comes from. Universalist believe that there is no hell and that universally everyone goes to heaven. Universalists were once a major religion in the United States, and their influence was huge for over a century in the areas of abolitionism, prison reform, and child labor laws. Our religious ancestors threw off the concept that people would only lead a compassionate life if they did so to avoid punishment of hell. Our religious ancestors knew that God would not punish us for our mistakes for being different. We are living in a culture forcing conformity based on punishment and domination. Those who do not conform to the norms of the powerful are punished and dominated. Our U.S. prison system is one example. The U.S. locks up more people per capita than any other nation at the staggering rate of 698 per 100,000 residents, far in excess of any other nation. Every year, 600,000 people enter prison, and 10.6 million go to jail. Our systematic racism against blacks on any statistical measure shows how punishment and death are used to control and dominate. People of color are incarcerated, die from preventable causes, and economically punished at rates far exceeding any white statistics. Native people have a long history of being forced to conform or be punished or killed. LGBTQ people are still being punished in unending implicit ways to force compliance to the white hetero norms. The rhetoric this last week from our president urged that state governors are to, quote, dominate the streets, unquote, and that by using the National Guard forces, they would end the protests, quote, so fast their heads would spin, unquote. We live in a culture based on using punishment and dominance to force conformance. But I believe we are at a turning point. And I believe what is happening has the potential of turning our punishment culture into something better, something more equitable, something more just. But I wonder if we can reform our systematic punishment institutions. I mean, can they be modified? Can they be merely altered or adjusted or ameliorated? And by whom? That the problem in living in a systemic system of punishment is that we don't see it because we're part of it. A fish has no recognition of being in the ocean, lake, or river. A fish just lives in the water. And so long as the water's not too putrid, the fish swims on. We live in our cultural system untouched by it until something happens to disturb it. When our order and normality is disturbed, we resort first to anger, which brings out our systemic response of domination and punishment. That's what Schopenhauer means by the second stage. The truth being revealed is violently opposed. Denial of racism in the United States is no longer an option. Racism and discrimination are real. It is in me, it is in you, it is in all of us, for we are swimming in the water of it. Anyone who is too different from the social norm is at risk. Black people are at risk. All the people who identify with the letters of LGBTQTTAAP, all are at risk because they swim in our systemic system of forcing conformity. The most disturbing question I have asked myself, and I have been asked by many of you, is what can I do? For weeks, I had no answer. And I am still overcome by the killings, by the punitive responses, by the lack of leadership, by the politicization of our cherished institution. I'm still overwhelmed. But a Zen saying says, move, and the way will open. So I've started moving toward a systemic trouble that I'm swimming in. And here are some things that I am beginning to do. First, grieve. I'm leaning into the pain and sorrow of having a broken heart. I will not minimize or dilute the pain of the deaths, violence, and punishment. I will sit with my grief and see what it can teach me. Next, I am listening. Watch the interviews of the protesters. Watch the news. Listen to anyone who's speaking their truth. Do not ask, what can I do to help you? For that question, ask for guidance from the victims of oppression. From a position of privilege, it's like asking the oppressed to fix the problem for you. Just listen without calculating a fix, and I am doing my best to do that. Next, I am educating myself. I naively thought I understood oppression and privilege. I don't. If you haven't already, read White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. Read How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. Watch the movie Just Mercy, which is now being streamed free on all platforms. Watch it twice. Go to the website mappingpoliceviolence.org, not just to read about the statistics, but to read about the individual stories. I don't even read the headlines for information anymore. I'm looking for the personal stories. Next, avoid outrage exhaustion. This is an overwhelming time. I take a break from the news, from the internet, from the sorrow with my spiritual practices. If you don't have a spiritual practice, get one. If you do, double down. And the last thing I'm doing is I am preparing to vote. I trust that you all know the power and the meaning of this, of our one tool in the democracy. Personally, I am currently not protesting in the streets. I live in a high-risk family and am choosing to shelter in place now, but I'm not idle. I am preparing myself for coming out when I feel safe again. I'm spending my time preparing for a long struggle. It is time for America to decide if we want to save ourselves. Inequities smother hope, and hope is the engine of democracy. Who's at fault for the mess we're in? I am. You are. We are. Yet there is no they to blame, for we are all part of the systemic system of punishment and domination, and only we can change it. My prayer and hope is that we can experience this era not as something to get through, or something to get over, or something to get past, but that we see it as our opportunity to save ourselves. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be.